Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Worship Drumming. This is a channel where I do popular worship tutorials on the drums, as well as I do drum lessons based around a worship-centered context, which I guess can kind of be today's video because I'm telling you all about my drum kit. The most asked question I get in the comments is, what drum kit is it that you are using? And I am answering that today, and I'm super excited to walk through everything and show you all of this. Hey, real quick before I start the video, I realized that I didn't talk about everything that I wanted to and missed a little bit of information on my kit as I was going through it. So if you see me jump over to this screen, that's because I am just inserting some information that maybe I felt I should have said, or maybe I forgot. But back to the video. Now, I'm gonna try to keep it as simple as possible for my people who've never seen this before or don't really know what I'm gonna be talking about. I'll try to nerd out for some of my people who love actually nerding out about all of this stuff. But overall, hopefully this can satisfy everyone in the type of language that I use. And as I go through it, hopefully it's simple, but also detailed for my people who maybe know a little bit more. So to start off, first, let's talk about what is this entire drum kit as a whole. So as a whole, essentially, this drum kit is what we call an acoustic electronic conversion. You take acoustic sized shells and you convert them into electronic drum shells. Now, why would you want to do that? That is pretty easy to answer if you've ever been shopping for electronic drums and noticed that you might pay $1,000 to get only a full-size snare, and then you're playing these little baby 8-inch, maybe 10-inch toms if you're buying a Alesis that gives you a little bit bigger toms and snare drum and all that. But if you're trying to buy something real quality and high-end like Roland or something, they're definitely going to charge you a lot for shells or pads that aren't actually acoustic sizes. So that is the main advantage. That's pretty much the reason anyone would want to do this. Now, starting out kind of getting a little bit more into detail on these things, you don't want to just do this though to some fancy drum kit or an acoustic drum kit that you really like. They make specific conversion kits if you really want to just flip from an acoustic to an electronic. This is more you're looking for an electronic kit, but you want it to be acoustic sizes and you're not trying to break the bank at the same time. So what you're going to notice is there's a lot of work that's actually going to go into making this kit, as you'll hear me talk as I go throughout this video. So getting more into it, let's talk about the shells now. The shells, I got the kick drum here, I got the rack tom and the snare drum all off the side of the road. I picked them up intending to make a really cool acoustic kit, and then once I watched some videos and realized I could make this electronic kit, I decided to go ahead and go for it. The floor tom over here I got off of eBay, and once again, these were the furthest thing from brand new. You want to buy them old and beat up. That's going to help lower the price. That was my whole goal, is try to keep this cheap. So kick drum, rack tom, snare drum for free. Paid maybe $30 for this because of the shipping, because it's a big drum and everything from eBay. Paid maybe around $30 altogether for it, for pretty much a beat up drum. Now, all that I did from these is I took the shell wrappings off. So the shell wrapping, that's just the color that you see on acoustic drums. All you gotta do is take that off, and then you can kind of make it whatever color it is that you want, at least with whatever stain colors that there are out there. And good strategy in case you're like, man, how am I just gonna stumble upon these on the side of the road, or I don't wanna pay the outraging shipping charges that there is on eBay. Well, if you got Craigslist or some other sort of local selling site that is around your area, then you could probably find some good things on there. I've been scrolling through Craigslist here, and I have mine set for the St. Louis area, and there's times where I could find a acoustic drum set with actually the cymbal stands and everything. I'm not going to use the acoustic cymbals they're giving me, but they'll still give them to me when I pay for it. But I can find the drum kit with some hardware and everything, usually for around $300 to $350. And that's pretty nice because you get the stands included with it, which stands can kind of be a little bit of a hassle and a little bit expensive to buy those brand new. So I would go look on Craigslist and everything to try to get yourself started. When it comes to changing the color of it, because more than likely they're gonna be beat up drums that have been sitting in a basement, you're gonna wanna take it apart and clean it up. Now, if you like the wrapping that's on it, cool. Go ahead and keep the wrapping. You're gonna save yourself a ton of time. I made a video showing you how to take the wrapping off and basically get the stain that you see on the drums that I have here. Sorry if you hear a little bit of rattle. I have this top head off. I'll show you that in just a moment. Essentially all I did is I took the silver wrapping that was on here off, I sanded, stained, and then put a finish on it. Now the snare, definitely could have done better. Could have done better on a lot of these drums, and I'll get to what this big black thing sticking off the side is in just a moment here. Essentially, you kind of get to make it custom and however you like, which is another cool thing about this. You don't have to just stick with, you know, the black shells that ATV is going to sell you for $1 bajillion, and you don't have to stick to the red that Alesis does on everything. You get to kind of just make it your own, which is a big advantage to doing all of this. But once again, it's going to come with all that extra work of taking those shells off, getting the glue off, sanding it, staining it, all of that. Moving on from there, now into kind of a little bit more specific about the drum heads and what's inside the drums. And we're going to talk how are these things electronic now. So after you've colored them and everything the way that you want it to be, you now have to basically pick heads to put on it. Now these heads are kind of a special material here. I'll take this one off and try to pop it out of the rim. This snare rim is kind of a little bent. It's not that these heads are bad, just this rim is kind of old and beat up from rim shots and stuff from whoever had it before me. And these are a meshy material. You can see that you can still read my shirt directly through it. That's because there's kind of like a lot of little holes because it's just essentially a woven drum head is all it is. It's made from a fabric and you can tell there's no like poppy noise or anything whenever I hit it. It's really quiet, and that's essentially the point of this whole entire thing. Now, this is what we call a one-ply head. A one-ply head essentially is just one piece of fabric. Sometimes there's 2 plies, which is 2 fabric stacks. They go all the way up to 3. Now, what's the difference as you get into the different plies and everything? 1 ply is the quietest, and also they're the cheapest, but also has the worst triggering results. 2 ply, good triggering results, gets a little bit louder though. 3 ply, great triggering results, gets a lot louder. And there's kind of a different variety on these. I just use these Remo silent strokes because they're the quietest. So here's essentially all people hear, at least what the room hears when I'm playing this. And that's just being picked up on the lapel mic there. But whenever I have the drums turned on, it's a lot louder of a noise that definitely overshadows this little hit from the floor tom or rack tom or whatever I'm playing. Pretty much, that's the drum heads. Now, let's take a look at the internal of the drums, and I'm gonna have to switch you guys over to the handheld here, so forgive me for any video shake that I have going on here. But looking into the drum right now. Now looking at this, you have basically a trigger system inside. You can see here on the snare, I have one that runs from here all the way over to here, and it mounts it in the center. The center mounted is pretty much what a lot of people want to go for. It gives you the most accurate results without a bunch of hassle or anything with it. Unfortunately, it does get a little bit more expensive when you're trying to find these. This is a Joe Becky trigger that I have here, which is not very easy to find because it's only sold in the United Kingdom, and I got lucky and found someone selling them on eBay. Other than that brand and everything, you can pretty much find any trigger. You can actually build your own triggers, but this is going to be probably the hardest thing to find. If you go on eBay, you can find people selling internal triggers. I would not go with those external triggers unless you're really on a budget or you really think that they might work and you want to try something new. I would just stick with the internal triggers because that's what I like the best. Looking at the internal trigger a little bit more specifically, what is this whole thing and what is it doing? You can see I have a black piece of foam here, which is going to absorb the hit, and this metal plate down here is going to be basically picking up the pressure of my hit. Now, sorry if there's a lot of hot glue here. I don't recommend that, but I had to kind of fix this in a pinch one day. But hey, it actually holds up pretty well. So this disc here is what we call a piezo. They're inside of guitars and stuff. You might have heard that if you've played guitar or anything. So this piezo essentially picks up the pressure that this foam cone is trying to kind of dampen and give me a little bit more dynamics here. And then it sends that signal out through the headphone jack over here. Now this headphone jack here, if you've watched my recent video, all it is just the sound hole that I drilled out to 1/4 inch to be able to fit this sort of, I say headphone jack, I guess it's just a 1/4 inch jack really. I'll try to bring you down here, sorry for the terrible video quality, but that's essentially what that 1/4 inch jack looks like, and it sits pretty well on the drum. Now essentially how this works is you take a 1/4 inch cable, this one is assigned to the snare, that's what that red band down there means. I just take it and then I plug it in there, and now this trigger is assigned to the snare cable that is running into the drum module. And that's pretty much how all of the drums work. So you can see here on my rack tom, I have a center mounted trigger that doesn't go all the way across. It kind of goes most of the way, but still is center mounted. And then I have another Joe Becky trigger over here on my floor tom. Inside of the kick drum is pretty much a completely different triggering system than what I have in here a little bit. There's a lot of blankets and everything mashed in there, and I'm not taking my kick drum apart to show you just because that is how precise I had to set the kick trigger inside of there. But I am using the exact same trigger as I am inside of the rack tom up here. The kick trigger has to be pretty precise. If you really want to know how to do that, go over to 65 Drums on YouTube. Justin Greenwald will tell you all about how to do it. He's what I've watched a lot to actually be able to make this entire acoustic electronic conversion kit. That's pretty much everything with the shells now. We're gonna get into the triggering and all that here in just a little bit, but moving on from the shells, let's talk cymbals. Now, cymbals are really, really straightforward. Other than buying the drums from Craigslist or just eBay, whatever, the second most expensive thing is going to be the cymbals that I am about to talk about. I got them off of eBay, got them used, and actually got some pretty good prices on them. The CY15 is what I'm using for the ride. Spent maybe about $200-ish on that. The CY13, which I'm using for the crash, I spent maybe about like somewhere in the $150, $130 range. Essentially, all the cymbals is just like any electronic drum cymbal, if you've ever seen it. You're just essentially taking the plug-in that says crash cymbal and you're plugging it into the crash cymbal. And then you just take that and you put it on a stand. Now I do have a stopper on my stand here so this doesn't rotate and the cord doesn't get all tangled up. It usually comes with the cymbals if you buy them new, or you can get them used off eBay like I did. So all my cymbals are just used cymbals off eBay, so I didn't have to pay the super high prices or anything. The ride cymbal's a little bit different over here. I'm not gonna necessarily take it off because I can show you over here on my crash cymbal. Actually, once again, let me take it back off. The ride cymbal, this is technically a ride cymbal, but I've just assigned it as a crash cymbal. And I'll tell you why I bought this ride cymbal instead of an actual crash cymbal. The reason I bought a CY13 and not just a CY12 is because I just wanted the extra inch to make it look more like a crash cymbal. That way it worked well with the ride and the hi-hat, which I used a CY12 for, to be able to kind of use and make it look more proportioned like a drum kit. So you can see that there's two ports there. There's this front port and the back port. The front port takes care of the edge and the bow, and then the back port takes care of the bow once again, and the bell zone, so you get all three of those zones. Sometimes you have to do a signing of MIDI and everything to actually get this to work, and essentially what that means is there's numbers that are assigned to this is the edge, this is the bow, this is the bell, and you have to line those numbers up so that way when you're hitting the bell, it's not accidentally triggering the edge. So if you want like a ding sound, it might accidentally trigger the washy sound of the edge, and you have to get those all assigned correctly by using what we call MIDI. That essentially is this ride cymbal over here. This is just a smaller version of this, but right now I'm just having it as a crash because that's what I have it assigned to, which is another great advantage about electronic drums over acoustic drums. Not only are they quiet, you can assign sounds pretty much however you want to assign them. Now where it's going to get kind of crazy talking about cymbals is when we talk about the hi-hats here. Now the hi-hat is kind of an odd thing when it comes to an acoustic electronic conversion. You might be thinking, how is it measuring the distance? How does it know if it's open? How does it know when it's closed? Well, I'll show you all of that right here. So on my hi-hat, this is a crash cymbal. And the reason this is a crash cymbal, I didn't want to pay the hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get, the Roland VH11 or what they're probably on a VH12 or VH13, all those sorts of things that are like $400 to $500. This is much cheaper. This cymbal here is maybe around $100, $150, somewhere you can find it on eBay. All I did is I took a piece of hi-hat hardware, shoved it through the middle because it's almost like it's designed to do that. That's how perfect that piece of hi-hat hardware fit through there. And I shove it through the middle and now can fit on my stand. This isn't it though. I have another thing I'm going to show you in just a moment, but first I want to show you that this has just a single port, so it can pick up the edge and also the bow, and it will function just like a hi-hat. The sounds that I have running on my software here picks up the edge and the bow. Now, how does it tell when the hats are open and closed? Well, that's going to come from this guy right here. Once again, budget options. This is from a company called Go eDrum, and this essentially is kind of like made in Taiwan and everything. It might take you a while to get it if you order it, but all this does is it measures the distance or how open or closed your hi-hats are. And it does it with this kind of little black piece sticking out the top that's a little ridge there. So it pushes down, says the hats are closed, and when it's released, it says the hats are open. Now there's 2 more distances between there, so I have all the way closed. When I left my foot up just a little bit, it gets a little more open, and then all the way open when I completely let my foot off of it. So this foam thing that I have here kind of just protects the top, which I'm not going to show you that right now because I can't balance it. And this hi-hat is what closes on it. So this is connected to the pole over here. And when I push down with my foot like that, as you see the pole move up and down, when I push down with my foot, the hi-hat pushes down on this black piece here, and now the hats are closed. When I let up on my foot, the hi-hat comes up and it lets up on that black piece, exposing it, telling the hi-hats that they are now more open. Now, once again, this is the budget option because you don't want to be spending tons and tons of money if you're on a budget. Unless you got a bunch of money, then probably go ahead and buy yourself just whatever roll-in kit you want. But a lot of us here are probably trying to save money, especially whenever we're doing kind of a whole huge big project like this. Now let's talk about how are you getting the sounds that you hear whenever you're watching my YouTube videos. That's going to come from a software that you can kind of see here that I am running on my computer. This is called Easy Drummer, and I'm not going to get a ton into Easy Drummer. You can look up tutorials and everything. It's called Easy Drummer 2, and it's got a lot of really awesome, great sounds built into it. How is all of this getting here? If you're confused and you're like, I don't know how this trigger thing here causes this over here to make a snare sound and make it sound nice. Well, first, the quality of the sound all comes from the software that I'm running on my laptop. How the sound gets there is all based off of the triggering of the drum. So this is going to pick up the pressure of my hit. It's going to send that into my drum module, and it sends it, once again, down one of these 1/4-inch cables. So if this was assigned to the snare, it's sending it down to the snare part in my module. And then the module reads and goes, okay, the snare was hit this hard. It sends that information through MIDI over to my laptop, which is what this USB cable is here. It's a USB cable that leads over to my drum module that has USB-A on it. It sends that information here, and then this just plays the sound. Take the headphone port on your laptop. So whenever it plays the sound, the laptop plays the sound, and it sends it out through the headphone jack, which is just running into a standard mixer, and the mixer is going to send it out through the mains. And that's essentially all that's happening here. I hope I did good at explaining this to you. If you have any questions about it, please leave them in the comment section below. If you have any ideas or if you've made one of these yourself, share all of that in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video and more content like it, then go ahead and subscribe for future content coming up. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an awesome day.